Welcome to Radioactive Freedom. As we were deliberating with others last on our video, it was suggested that we should deliberate a little bit further on the Kabal. So today's video will be addressing the Kabal and how they function as a people and as a group, but we'll be looking at it from the point of the South African perspective. Now, when we talk about the Kabal, we are simply addressing what is popularly known as the ruling class, or what some would say are the petty bourgeoisies. Now, in South Africa, we'll be having a structure of the 10% Kabal. Now, the 10% Kabal would mostly be made up of 2% influence of the international petty bourgeoisies, while the 8% will be the locally stationed influencers. Now, when we're talking about this influence, we're talking about financial hegemony that they have across the world and across countries, how they are able to create revolutions and how they are able to fund and defund governments and politicians. For example, we know that it was the Kabal that funded the assassination of Patrice Lumumba in Congo, even though the frontman of the Kabal would say it's CIA, but CIA is just a henchman for the Kabal. CIA is more like Inkabi, a owner Yamatex. So they take all the heat and all the blame, but nobody knows who really runs the CIA. And they say the CIA is run by the president. That's a lie, because the CIA can even kill their own president, because they're not run by the CIA, but they are run by this Kabal. And remember, CIA people are also employees, and therefore they fall part of the proletariat. It's just that they don't know it yet. And if they know it, perhaps they can be unionized, and once they are unionized, they can understand that the war which we have against the Kabal is the war that they have, because the CIA director does not know if his grandchild will ever become the CIA director. What if his grandchild ends up in the street smoking the same drugs that he's been smuggling from Colombia into America in order to fund their operations and to fund themselves? He doesn't know that. He's just a character in a large scale of play. But anyway, as we continue, the 2% is the influence of the international cabal or the petty bourgeoisies in South Africa, and the 8% is the local influencers. Now, we'll not focus on the 2%, even though this 2% do not be fooled by the numeracy of it. The world serious power. When I say 2%, I'm just showing how small the group is, but they have serious power internationally. Serious power to a point that they can change presidents, they can change governments, and they can change the global scale. That's the kind of power the Kabal has. Yet again, that power can be dispossessed by the majority of the people if the people are organized and they're able to rise and bring about the revolution, which we saw taking place during the French Revolution. Now, in this 8%, which is the local influencers, that's where you will find the local players who are owning the means of production. Now, we said the means of production is the the different sectors of the economy which we have in our modern society of production. Now, that different sectors of economy, we said it is the primary, the secondary, and the tertiary sector. If you haven't seen my first video, go check it out and it will explain to you a little bit about the primary, the secondary, and the tertiary sector as being part of the means of production. Now, this 8% are this custodian of this 2% in terms of being the local ears, eyes, and mouth for the 2% cabal, which is the international petty bourgeoisies that are running the big corporates and the big monopolies of the world. Now, therefore, it means when we are dealing with the 8%, we must be aware of the 2%. As we said, 2%, it is the cabal that owns the intelligence services and owns a couple of politicians and political parties, and therefore they can destabilize a nation and a country. An example that we can give is what happened to Libya of Muammar Gaddafi. It is the 2% that went for him and they took him out. And after that, I'm sure they celebrated in their secret chambers as they were drinking wine and having their sexual orgies, as vile as they are, we know them. Not only Libya, but throughout this 20th century and the 21st century, we can count a lot of nations that has been attacked by the cabal. Syria is one of them. And their mode of operation is easy. In every nation and country and society, there's disputes, and yours is just to be able to see how can you exploit that dispute for your own benefit. And that's how you'll find the intelligence services that are operating in certain nations. That's what they will do. For example, I'll use also Libya again. In Libya, obviously, although it was a progressive nation, there were disputes. Every nation has disputes, and that dispute, if it's not being carefully guarded by the nation, it can be used by these intelligence services and operatives to be able to exploit it and bring about a revolution, which is not a true revolution, but it's a cooked revolution in the chambers of this cabal. So as we talk about the National Democratic Revolution, we must be aware also that it can be hijacked by this cabal because they have infiltrators in any structures and every structures. Be sure about it. So when we talk about the cabal, we talk about a seriously organized monolithic block of power that if a president may dare to speak against them, he might find himself tomorrow with a gunshot behind his head. Who are we talking about? We're talking about Abraham Lincoln. It happened to him. Who are we talking about? We're talking about J.F. Kennedy. It happened to him as well. And countless other presidents and activists and political leaders in the world. They found themselves at the mercy of this cabal. And this cabal is very ruthless. This cabal is barbaric, racist, and very fascist to the core. In fact, what binds them together is the fascist ideals. Now, who rules that fascist ideals at the center? Only conspiracy theorists can tell you who's at the center of this fascist cabal. But what we know is this fascist cabal exists and has been there. It's a historical structure, and therefore to fight it, it's not impossible. Russia did it, China did it, Cuba did it, and is still doing it. But it doesn't mean that there are no infiltrators in those movements. There are infiltrators. In Russia, there was an infiltrator who became a leader. And when he became a leader, he misdirected the revolution from what it was supposed to be. Even though a warning was given by Vladimir Lenin that this kind of a leader should not be even allowed into a leadership position. But nonetheless, it did happen. So these are the kind of the infiltrators that are trained and set up in order to lead revolutions. So when the National Democratic Revolution is to be implemented, we need to have as well a very sophisticated and intelligent structure that will be able to see whether the policies is being flaunted or whether this revolution is being steered not by the people, not by the workers, but it's being steered by some cabal in their chambers somewhere internationally. We'll go deeper in our next video on who are these cabal and petty bourgeoisies. Will not be naming people, but will be naming big corporates and monopolies that are existing in the world that have such power. And remember, in these big corporates and these monopolies, most of them, they are fronts. Now when we mean fronts, it means that they are not really connected to this cabal at face value. At face value, you will not really see that they are, but if you do some digging and if you do some journalist research and then journalist investigation, then you'll come to the conclusion that indeed these people are connected to the cabal and their agenda is that of the cabal. Now this monolithic bloc, it's a very strong, organized, petty bourgeoisie fascist movement, and therefore only sober and serious people can face it and overcome it. People like Ernesto Che Guevara, Commandant, the Good Doctor, he's one of the politicians that was murdered by CIA, which we said is the henchman or the lackey of this cabal, for opposing and bring about the Cuban Revolution with the Cuban people led by Commandant Fidel Castro. So in our next video, we'll elaborate even further on how we can implement the National Democratic Revolution in South Africa, but also be aware of what it is known as the third force. This is the third force, the cabal. Thank you.